All right, our next combination catalyst is going to be the Roleta sweep. This is a personal favorite. This one's super, super cool. And yeah, I just don't want to say it's like techie and neat, and it's one of those things that if you really practice and get into, you can be really, really effective. So if David's pressing into me over top of my thigh, I'm like, cool, I can be under this leg, or I can just be on his foot, and I'm attempting to rock and knock, and let's say you sprawl this leg back for some strange reason. I mean, triangles will happen. That's a common attack in the gi, is you'll see people trying to attack, and then if you bring your knee in to protect yourself, now I'm like, ooh, cool. And I can start to dump him. But what happens when David gets wise, you start posturing. Starting to be able to build into wrestling scenarios is a really neat thing. You're gonna be able to get yourself into like funk style singles, rolling across your shoulders and turning. If you think about it, guard is really long form funk. If funk is, let's say, something, who am I saying? How would you describe funking in wrestling?
I would say funking is anytime you potentially use a scenario that is perceived as negative, when maybe you roll across your back and immediately start to rebuild under your opponent.
So the purpose of, what would you say like is good funk versus not good funk? Like good technique versus something that's like, that's not funky, that's silly.
I would say good funk is used in the right scenario, and when you use it effectively, you're not on your back for long. You're usually building up right away, getting under your opponent.
You're not like anchoring yourself to negative position, right?
No, if possible.
Cool. And then how does that function differently in like freestyle wrestling?
Well, in freestyle, unfortunately, you're unable to roll across your back at all. So funk in freestyle does exist, but it usually happens without exposing your back to the floor.
Or it comes at like a big cost, right? If you want to get into it.
Yeah, you would have to give up points, which is obviously not ideal.
Particularly at the level where like if you give up points, you're going to usually tend to
if points are scarce, then would be a real shame.
Right on. Okay, cool. So basically, like I've learned a lot about this type of stuff, from David, and then so that's been a huge help personally. And I would say, like, if you think of the guard again as funk wrestling in a lot of ways, they give you a lot more leeway because you're allowed to be on your back for an extended period of time. There's nothing about being on your back that loses the match by default, except in wrestling. But at the same time, I don't want to be on my back. I'm totally willing to. It's cool. It's a great position. I don't mind. I think again, tying people up, doing all this stuff, close guard, they're all phenomenally valuable positions. But if someone said, "Would you trade close guard for the mount?" You're like, duh. If you wouldn't, it says more about issues you're having with the mount, or issues you're having with decision making to understand the value of things. So what I want to do is go, hey, the second I can build to run this guy over and I can become more powerful than him, being underneath is great. But like funk wrestling, you're going underneath a lot of times, right? Or
Yes.
And then, once underneath, you're like, cool, let's go.
Trying to build back up as soon as possible.
Right on. So again, in this particular case, this is how it would look if. Would you mind putting that foot up?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay. So let's take out the whole left sweep part of the whole deal. I'm like, you can start to build. So if we come back, nice thing about jiu-jitsu is you have so much leeway to learn how to do funk wrestling, because if you get stuck on your back for any period of time,
Unfortunately, no score.
yeah, no one cares. They're like, cool, man. So whereas the other one, it takes like the bar is much higher. Let's say, for instance, wrestling, get much better at funk wrestling to pull it off in college wrestling.
Yeah, the margin for error is a little slimmer.
Yeah, quite a bit slimmer, right?
Quite a bit.
Yeah. So again, let's come back to the Roleta deal. I'm like, cool. I'm trying to shoot a triangle. If you're not having it, I'll try to knock you. If you're not having it, try to do whatever and hit something. Whatever you like. There you go. Why did you build? Keep going. I'm like, oh man, why did you build?
Seemed like the thing to do.
Why did it seem like the thing to do, you think?
I'd like to be more powerful.
For sure. If we could go back for a second, let's say that crab. Could you go to crab rack? What if you start building and I'm like, hey, stop that. Well, now you don't need to build, do you?
Mm-hmm.
So again, keeping in mind like just the various types of attack that we've discussed. Build when you can, move them when you can, reorient when you can, address posts when you can. You're going to get a lot of value out of that. And the Roleta is basically, a weeble wobble that you're utilizing to knock the person this way and that, and you're going to be able to build up into into potentially dominant position and wrestle. And I say wrestle like it's just say everything. Jiu-jitsu is wrestling. Grapple in a really assertive fashion that's going to allow you to get to your dominant positions quickly so that you don't kind of languish in negative spots for an extended period of time.